Okay, you guys, as promised, I am going to dive into Kamala Harris's natal chart and transits. For her transits, of course, I'm mostly going to focus on November 5th. However, there is some kind of an event, I think it's called the National Democratic Convention that's happening on August 19th. I honestly would have not known anything about this, but I have a friend who sent me the link and said, can you go look at Kamala's transits for this date? This particular friend really does not want Kamala Harris to be president. And so she was asking me to look into this for her. And I did. And I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe how it's almost like they planned the convention for her to be extra powerful that night. Okay, so I want to show you guys that as well. One more thing, well, maybe a couple more things I got to mention here. First of all, as far as my, because I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, well, what's Erin's opinion? Who does she want to be the president? I don't care. I just don't care. I've given up on this stuff. It's the same thing over and over and over and over again. And every single time somebody says to me, but this is the most important one, you know, that sort of thing. And I just have completely given up faith. Not like that, but some of you might actually be understanding the difference between incorporated United States versus unincorporated United States. And in fact, I have quite a few books on this stuff, but this is like the most simple read. It's actually kind of fun to read as well. It's called Word Magic, The Powers and Occult Definitions of Words by, and I hope I'm pronouncing this somewhat correctly, Pao Chang. I apologize if that's not the proper pronunciation there. But and what I also really like about that book is that it actually, because it is such a short read, it gives you a list of other resources so you can dive deeper into that stuff. And then, I don't know, for myself, I've just started to realize it really is a puppet show and they are actors, okay? And I also understand a lot of people would argue that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not one of these puppets. And I can understand that argument. I really can. And the guy is coming off as the most level-headed out of all three of them. His transits look extremely, extremely powerful. And what's the word I'm looking for? This is probably one of the most powerful years of his life. However, is that going to just manifest? He's obviously getting more attention than he ever has, at least in my lifetime that I've ever, seen of Robert F. Kennedy. All of a sudden he's all over the place, especially on social media. Maybe not on the news, but if that's for reasons. But the guy's obviously getting a lot of attention. He's got potential to win this thing. That's my opinion. I know if people are telling me, if you go look at the polls, he's only at 3% or whatever. Well, that's the polls, and I don't trust those. I don't trust any of this, if I'm being totally honest. But the charts and the transits do tend to show, even though these are actors, in my opinion. And I apologize if that, triggers anybody. I authentically apologize and don't mean to upset anybody by going into this sort of thing. But it's just my opinion, and I think I'm entitled to it. Okay, so there's that. Now, Trump's transits also look extreme. I mean, extreme. And that's the word I'm using because Trump has extreme potential to win this thing, okay? But he's also got this very strange Uranus transit coming through. Uranus, out of all the influences of those lights in the sky, Uranus is the one that is the most unpredictable, throws the strangest things our way, surprises, spasmodic, weird things. I already put a video out about what happened, what was it, July 13th, the supposed, assassination attempt on Trump. That morning, before that thing even happened, I was looking at Trump's transits going, oh my gosh. And I've actually said this before in a video that I texted, and you guys know who you are, I texted two of my astrology friends and said, do you want to get together and make a video about Trump's transits? Because he's got some crazy stuff going on today. And lo and behold, that all came out on the news. I question everything that's on the news personally. Not saying it didn't happen, not saying that at all. I just question everything. Okay, now for Kamala's chart itself, it's very powerful. It's a very, very powerful. Clearly, I can see why she has made it to the position where she is. But her transits meaning if you don't know what transits are, that means it's like what is being influenced on her right now or throughout this year or the next 20 years. But her transits, she does have a couple things that are kind of strong, but they're not as extreme or powerful as Trump's and Kennedy's. Okay. So there's that. But I still want to get into this and show you guys. If you're wondering why I'm interested in this stuff, it's because I'm an astrologer. Maybe not every astrologer is I said I actually venture to guess maybe not all astrologers are interested in this stuff. But when it comes to when I open up any social media account and something is just the number one thing that's always going to be there, of course, I'm going to want to look at the astrology behind it. And it's always fascinating to me. Okay, so let's get into this. So if you are brand new here, welcome to my channel and thank you for tuning in. I work with geocentric Western astrology. So with that said, what we're looking at here is basically a snapshot of what we call the tropical zodiac at the time of her birth based on her location. Now, of course, I have no way of saying with 100% certainty that Kamala Harris was born on October 20th, 1964 at 9:28 p.m. in Oakland, California, because I was not there for her birth. But, and that's for all the candidates, but they really all do seem to fit their charts to a T. So I'm rolling with it. Now, with geocentric, that means we put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. So basically, here's Kamala. These things right here are the symbols for the planets and the celestial bodies, like that's Jupiter. This right here is the North Node. Here's Mars. Here's Uranus. Here's Pluto. Here's Venus. Here's the Sun. Here's Mercury. Here's Neptune. When we go in the wheel just a little ways, these things are the symbols for the zodiac signs that all these things were beaming through onto her when she supposedly took her first breath of air. Okay, now I'm going to do my best to try, because maybe some of you have never even seen a natal chart before. So I'll try to, make this easy for you guys to understand. If there's things that you don't understand, don't worry about it. Just get what you can out of it. And then I also don't want to make this totally boring for people who are familiar with this stuff. So I'll just do my best here. Okay. And I also want to say this as well. I'm not going to do a major super deep dive. And the reason for that is, like I mentioned earlier, I've got a couple of astrology friends and we keep talking about getting together and doing this as a team. And there's a particular friend of mine who she's an incredible astrologer. We keep wanting to connect, but she's really busy right now. So hopefully, maybe as we get closer to November, I'll connect with her and we'll do something that really gets into the nitty gritty stuff. But what I'm going to point out are things that just stand out to me most. Okay, so let's start with, I'll just say this right now. She was born basically a full moon, just before a full moon heat. Okay, she's got a very strong grand air trine. She's got an incredible Saturn. She's a lot more fierce than the average Libra because, we'll get into all this. But let's start by talking about her sun. Okay, this right here is a symbol for the sun. This right here is a symbol for the sign of Libra. So she was born at 27 degrees and 48 minutes Libra. Now, the sun is really like our sense of identity, who we are on the inside. Now, the sign of Libra is actually lovely. It's a very charming energy. Does that mean I think Kamala Harris is lovely and charming? No. But the sign of Libra in and of itself, I happen to love the sign of Libra. I've got a lot of Libra friends, especially Libra risings. Great. But it's the sign of justice. It's the sign of balance. It's the sign of partnerships. It's when I say the sign of balance, well, the motto is I balance, but it's represented by the scales. Okay, the scales, when you walk into a lot of courtrooms, especially the fancy ones, they'll have the scales like etched into some sort of marble wall or something like that, because the scales are to represent justice. Okay. Do I think Kamala Harris is really wanting justice for the world? No, I don't think that. Again, I don't mean to trigger anybody. Some people might be out there thinking, oh, of course she is. I don't know for sure. I'm just reading what I see here in the chart and just from what I pick up on the little 15-second reels that people send me on Instagram. But okay, the sign of justice. And in fact, going into that, a lot of people who do have their sun in Libra, or if they're a Libra rising, or if you've got Libra ruling your 10th house, especially if you've got strong planets in the sign of Libra in your 10th house, your house of career, or if your midheaven is in Libra, a lot of people will be very drawn to work in the so-called justice system. And I am actually one of those. I've got my North Node conjunct Pluto and my midheaven all in the sign of Libra. They're all snuggled up together in that sign of Libra. And I actually got my college degree, an honors degree in criminal justice law enforcement. But once I realized that it's not a justice system, I didn't want anything to do with it. So it was some wasted money on that degree, but whatever. Now, a lot of people will be drawn into that kind of, especially the ones that don't have any idea how, and again, this is just my opinions here, that it's not a justice system at all. But a lot of people aren't aware of that. In fact, I have a lot of friends, especially when I was younger, that would want to go into this field because they want to be the good guy. They want to be the good lawyer. They want to be the good cop. They want to be the good judge, that sort of thing. And so a lot of people with that Libra energy would be drawn to do something like that. Or not, or the sign of Libra is also, there's a lot of Hollywood actors that have their sun in Libra, or all those Libra placements that I talked about. The sign of Libra can do great in front of a camera, okay? But it's also, okay, it's what we call the cardinal air sign. Now that word cardinal is gonna be kind of important here, especially when I get into this for the full moon thing. The cardinal signs are the signs that are about projecting forward, starting the project. Okay, I always do this when I'm talking about the cardinal signs because that's what they're like. Okay, the mutable signs are like, oh, let's do this over here. Wait, no, let's do that over there. Let's mutate. Let's be adaptable. The fixed signs are like, oh, I want to stay. I don't want to be bouncing all over the place. I don't want to start the project. I just want to be here. Okay, but the cardinal signs are about projecting forward. Now, out of all the cardinal signs, I will say this: the sign of Libra is probably the least forceful. But when the way that I see the cardinal Libra energy manifest is a lot of these people will come out, say you're at a party or something like that, or even if not a party, and just at the grocery store or whatever, the Libra energy comes up and sticks their hand out to say, hi, I'm so-and-so, nice to meet you. Like that's that force that comes through. But in the element of air has a lot to do with charm, but also has to do with intellect. But also has a lot to do with socializing. Okay. Now, clearly we can see that she's got a lot of these Libra qualities. Okay. In fact, I think she kind of, in my opinion, charmed her way to the top. Okay. And I'm not even saying she's on top, but to the point where she's at. She used her charm to get there. Again, I don't particularly find her charming, but I know a lot of people do. Okay. Now, this right here is the moon in the sign of Aries, 27 degrees Aries. Aries is the cardinal fire sign. When we think about fire, fire is energy. Okay, so this is that forceful energy coming through the element of fire. Okay, it's ruled by Mars. The sign of Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars, a lot of people would recognize Mars as being the planet of war. Okay, the sign of Aries is like the warrior of the zodiac. The moon in astrology is what rules over our emotions, okay, how we emotionally process things, not necessarily our emotional reaction. That's more Mars, but the internal emotional response is very much under the moon's influence. Okay, so when people are born with their moon in Aries, not all of them, because there are things that can counteract this. But when people are born with their moon in Aries, especially a full moon in the sign of Aries, they can have this tendency for like hothead, but it's going on inside. Okay, it's not necessarily, especially when you think about your sun and Libra, you know, balancing things out, coming off as charming, but inside there's probably a lot of people will even get like red in the face when their moon is in the sign of Aries. The sign of Aries in medical astrology rules the brain, basically the top of the head. Okay, so that's why I talk about the hot head energy. All the energy rushes to the top of the head when there's moments of emotional frustrations. Okay, now because she was born on this full moon in cardinal signs, I mean, anybody who's born, especially again, if it's just before the full moon peaks. Her moon's at 27 degrees and 39 minutes. Her sun is at 27 degrees and 48. Those are arc minutes. So it's about, literally about anywhere between 15 and 18 minutes or something before the full moon peaked. When that happens, those people have a very strong tendency to be powerful in some way, shape, or form. but it's kind of a double whammy when they're in cardinal signs, okay? Forceful signs. But another thing about, but they can be very powerful people for sure. Another thing about being born on a full moon, obviously it means they're opposite each other. Anytime when the sun and the moon are exactly opposite each other up in the sky, or close to opposite, exact opposite to each other in the natal chart, that means it's a full moon, okay? Or in any zodiac, it means it's a full moon. And when that happens, yeah, they can be powerful, but it can also manifest as kind of having two separate approaches to the way you go about life, okay? And those two separate approaches don't necessarily mesh well together or blend well together. That's what happens when we see an opposition. They are opposing each other, okay? So it's like her inner being might have one thing going on, but her emotions just want to blow, okay? They don't mesh well together. Okay, so there's that. Now, the next thing I'm going to point out is her rising sign. So, and by the way, I'm using something called a whole sign house system. I am very, very comfortable using Placidus. That's actually what I was originally trained with. But when I really generally like to stick with the whole sign house system, but especially when I'm looking at something that involves a career, because I want to see exactly where that midheaven comes through. Okay, now again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. But this right here is the symbol for the rising sign or the ascendant, okay? Those words are completely interchangeable. So we see the ascendant at 24 degrees Gemini. Now, the ascendant it's basically the horizon, okay? This right here is to show the horizon. It shows what degree of what zodiac sign was on the horizon when somebody took their first breath of air. And what it rules over is the persona, like the outward expression. It's a very, very important part of the chart because it very much has to do with, it's like the lens that we see this experience through, but also the lens that others see us through, okay, the persona. Now, Gemini happens to be kind of like the social butterfly of the zodiac. It's generally referred to as a sign of communication, okay? So I think she's extremely sociable. Now, this is what we call the mutable air sign. Again, the air signs tend to be more sociable, period. Mutable means adaptable. Now, with that said, I see this as somebody, I'm going to get into a lot more things here that kind of put all these little puzzle pieces together. But what I see here is somebody who can go to social gatherings, a party or whatever. And let's say one night she's going to some sort of a social gathering where everybody's got their suit and tie and they're super proper and all the etiquette is, just on point. And she can present herself, fit right in with that kind of a setting. But then even like an hour later, go to some rager where people are twerking and taking shots and blend right in and fit because she can adapt into that, especially in the sign of Gemini, the mutable air sign, adaptable sociability. Okay, so not only that, but this is like a major double whammy. She's different than the average Gemini rising because this right here is something called the North Node. If you've ever had a reading with me, you know how much emphasis I put on the North Node. The North Node is very much about the direction we are going in this life. Up in the sky, the North Node is what pumps celestial energy into Earth. In fact, in like real traditional ancient astrology, the nodes are said to be even more powerful than the sun and the moon. They're what make eclipses happen. They're also said to rule over the journey of our soul. Okay, now there's a whole heck of a lot more to these nodes, but one word that can work to describe the North Node is kind of like our destiny. Now, the reason why that's not entirely accurate is because, in my opinion, the whole chart is our destiny. But the North Node, again, it's like the direction we're going in. So with that said, like I always encourage my clients to develop the qualities of the zodiac sign that their North Node is in. And that's where the rewards are. Okay. Now, when she took her first breath of air, that North Node was, what is this? It's 5 arc minutes before the horizon. Okay. That means, this is a very strange way to describe it, kind of recording one, but again, just trying to get you guys to understand how powerful this is. It's like, imagine being born, like you take your first breath of air and your destiny's sitting on the horizon. Okay, that means it's a major double whammy. A lot of times when people are born with their north node conjunct, meaning right next to the ascendant, which is rare. Of course, it happens, but it's pretty darn rare to be born with the north node right on the horizon. And when people are, it's like they know what direction they're going in. They do these things that look like a slice of pie. They're called the houses, which I'm not trying to go a little bit into the houses today, but they're basically like the themes of our life or the area of our life where things manifest. Okay, this right here is the first house, which is the house of self. Everybody's rising sign comes through the first house. So when the house of self, when that north node is in the house of self, it's a self-driven energy. Okay, these people are, it's almost like their life takes them in the direction they need to go in. Okay, so there's that. This is a massive amount of Gemini energy coming through. Okay, now something, I'm trying to decide if I should go into this right now. I think I should. Okay, so whatever planet or celestial body rules somebody's rising sign, that means that that celestial body is that person's, like the captain of their ship. It's the lord of their chart. Now, the sign of Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So Mercury is the lord of her chart. Okay, now with that said, Mercury in her natal chart is going to be very prominent. It's going to stand out. It's like the #1 key player for her in this life. Now, Mercury, in of itself, Mercury rules over our mental function and our communication skills. Basically, what Mercury does, we're constantly receiving information. And no matter what we're doing, even if, say you're outside or you're driving or you're drinking a cup of tea or you're staring at a white wall, reading a book or looking at TV, you're constantly receiving information. That's Mercury taking that information in. Basically, Mercury puts a label on that piece of information and files it away somewhere into your consciousness. Then when you want to communicate that information, Mercury goes in and finds that little file and brings the information back out for you to communicate. In medical astrology, Mercury rules basically has a huge influence on the entire nervous system. Okay, going in and back out, information going in and back out. Now, her Mercury is at 1 degree Scorpio. Okay, anything that's a 1 degree, that it's like a very, very pure, condensed influence of that particular zodiac sign. So Scorpio is most commonly represented by the scorpion. It's the most intense, fierce, and magnetic sign of the zodiac. Okay, so with that said, she's got this fierce energy that comes out. And not only that, but her Mercury blends in with her inner being, even though they're in different zodiac signs. Here's Mercury at 1 degree Scorpio. Here's her sun at 27 degrees Libra. They're in different zodiac signs, but they're only about 4 degrees away from each other. So they are blending together. So she's a lot more fierce and magnetic and powerful than just the average sun in Libra. Okay, now you guys are following along here. Again, I might be boring the heck out of some people, and some people might be like, what the heck is she talking about? Can't follow along. The next thing I'm going to talk about is her Saturn. So this right here is Saturn. Now, Saturn in the chart is what influences discipline, responsibility. Saturn is a very rigid, cold, astringent energy for all of us, not just for Kamala. That's what Saturn rules over, is discipline and responsibility and structure. Okay. And Saturn, she's got an incredibly powerful, really just kind of stoked Saturn in her natal chart. Okay, which most people don't. So when you do, when you've got a stoked Saturn, you're stoked, because in fact, when somebody has a very, very debilitated Saturn, these people are the ones that have a very hard time being responsible. This is what's so nice about being an astrologer, is you can see these things and you can see where somebody might need a little more encouragement and that sort of thing. Kamala here, it can be quite powerful in the world based on this Saturn. Okay, Saturn is one of Aquarius's rulers. Okay, here's the symbol for the sign of Aquarius. Her Saturn is coming through 28 degrees Aquarius. That's Saturn's own home. Okay, it's like he's in his own castle. He gets to function the way he wants to. He gets to be the way, like how Saturn would naturally want to influence. Now, the sign of Aquarius, by the way, Saturn also rules Capricorn, for those of you who are curious about what's going on here. But the sign of Aquarius is very much the sign of humanitarianism. Okay, it's like the sign of the team, but it's also the sign of individualism. Meaning, it's like the sign of Aquarius. Sign of Aquarius is actually the most dynamic sign of the zodiac by far, uh, in my very strong opinion. Some people might disagree, but Aquarius, it's you could get 10,000, Pisces in a room and see the similarities between them. 10,000 Aries in a room and see the similarities. 10,000 Tauruses, see the similarities. You get 10,000 Aquariuses together, they're all going to be unique from each other, but more than likely they would all be able to team together and work together. Okay, that sign of Aquarius is really what it's all about. But it's also very much about sharing information, all sorts of things. It's another air sign. Okay, now, so with that said, here's Saturn, Mr. Rigid, about responsibility in his own castle of Aquarius. Not only that, but I will point this out as well. Saturn is coming through her ninth house, which is like the house of advanced knowledge or higher learning. Okay, I do feel like I've never looked into this, but she probably went, I mean, honestly, anybody who's running for president probably went to some kind of a university anyway. But even if I didn't know who this was, I would say this is probably somebody who went to some kind of a college where she got the higher education. Okay, so that said, let's get into this grand trine. This right here, this blue line, obviously there's a bunch of blue lines, but I'm just going to kind of focus on the main one that stands out to me most, or really the three that stand out to me most. This blue line that's going from Saturn to her sun. That is called a trine. Okay, all the stuff is calculated through geometry. A trine is approximately 120-degree angle. Now, what that trine does is it means those planets or celestial bodies or zodiacal points, whatever they are getting along. Okay, it means they're having a harmonious connection. So here's her inner being, which is, charming little Libra, but conjunct fierce Mercury and Scorpio. They're getting along with the ruler of discipline. Okay, and over here, we have her ascendant, her persona. And that is also having a trine with Saturn. And then we've also got another trine going back over here to her sun. This is called a grand trine, okay, which is pretty rare. Of course, some people have them, but certainly not everybody. Usually people have at least one trine in their natal chart. Some people have a ton of trines, but that doesn't mean that they're all going to make a connection together and become that full grand trine. And it's kind of said that people who have a grand trine, again, this is going to depend on the zodiac signs that they're in and the modality and the elements and that sort of thing. But they kind of can have a little more luck in the world, or just things kind of can flow for them. Okay, now this is a grand air trine. Okay, this up here, Aquarius is an air sign. Over here, Gemini is an air sign. Over here, Libra is an air sign. The element of air is the most sociable of all the elements. This is a very sociable person. I think I already said this once, but I'm going to say it again. I definitely say, oh gosh, not only that, but Saturn, before I even say that, let me say this as well. This thing right here is called the midheaven, which that is really what shows the career and the status in the world. Okay, and that is coming from her 10th house, which is actually the house of career and status. Okay, so a lot of people, when they're born with their midheaven in that house of career, just tend to have a little bit more of a tendency or an ability to be able to have some kind of a career. Okay, so there's that coming through 2 degrees Pisces. Now, Pisces is certainly not necessarily the most professional of the zodiac signs. Pisces is actually the sign of oneness. Okay, Pisces is the sign that can't we all get along? Pisces really is a sign of spirituality, okay, that sort of thing. That doesn't mean every single person who's a Pisces can't be. I'm a Pisces. I feel like I'm fairly professional, maybe not totally, but enough. And I know plenty of very professional Pisces because there's so much more to the natal chart. The sign of Pisces in and of itself is the sign of oneness, okay? So here we have, and it's not only that, but it's like flowy. Okay. So here we have, her projecting herself out into the public through career and that sort of thing with the blend, because these guys are also conjunct, even though they're not in the same zodiac sign, they're still about 4 degrees away from each other. So they're blended together. So we've got the responsible Saturn coming through the sign of humanitarianism, conjunct her midheaven in the sign of, oneness. But Saturn also, this is his favorite spot to be at the top of the chart. I mean, technically he's in his joy in the 12th, but this is where Saturn gets to be strong, because really the top of the chart is all about authority, especially this 10th house. So here's authority, but coming through this, it's like blending in with this. I can be charming and fierce, and I can also mutate into different kind of settings and be Miss Professional, but also I can get down and party at the same time. But I also care about humanity, and I'm presenting myself, with oneness. Okay. Now, do I think those things are authentic in her? I personally don't. Okay. I personally don't. And I could be totally wrong. I could be totally wrong. Again, personally, I think that if you're running for president, not every single person who's ever run for president is going to be coming from this nature, but they usually don't win if they are coming with an authentic, care for the world. But I just don't really, I don't see that. But I can see this is let's say somebody came to me with this chart. I had no idea who it was. I would say this is going to be a very, very powerful person. They're going to make their way to the top. Okay, maybe not the top, but very close. But they're also going to be able to present themselves with charm and balance and be the social butterfly and that sort of thing, and climbing their way to the top through being charming. Okay, now. Oh boy, should I get into, let me point out from Mars really quick here, because I mentioned how the moon is more like our internal emotional response. The Mars is more like our emotional reaction. Okay, so she got a strong Mars. Here's what Mars is, how we put things into action. Okay, Mars rules in medical astrology. Mars rules over our muscles and our adrenal glands. It's what makes us go take action, go do what we got to do. Talking about how Aries is the warrior of the zodiac, it's ruled by Mars. Okay, now her Mars is in Leo. So Leo is like the sign of courage. But Leo is also a very playful energy. It's a courageous yet playful energy. Okay, it's also fixed fire, which can be stubborn, and it's hilarious because Trump's Mars is also in Leo. Very different degree. I think this is at 1 degree. It's just very early degrees of Mars. But both of them having their Mars in Leo, we're talking about butt and heads big time. Okay, but this is also she can go after things, and some of you, in fact, almost every time, well, not every single time, because there's things that can always counteract anything in astrology. Can always, let's say somebody, well, anyway, there's just because somebody's Mars is in Leo doesn't mean that everything you would read about Mars and Leo is going to work out, because there's aspects that can change it. But almost every time that I'm giving a reading and I see somebody's Mars is in Leo, I'll say something along the lines of, you've probably gotten every single position you've ever applied for, every single job you've ever applied for. And they're like, yeah, I did, because it's go get them. But not only that, but it can also be playful. Okay, so I see this Kamala Harris. I mean, most of us have heard her cackling, and it's like when it's almost like she thinks, I don't know, maybe she laughs to make it less uncomfortable for people or something like that. But I see her kind of being fierce, but then laughing about it. And that is very much this chart. I'm briefly going to point out these guys all together here. Here's her Venus, her Pluto, and her Uranus, all conjunct together in the sign of Virgo. Basically, to summarize this, I think she probably has very intense relationships. Venus conjunct Mars and Pluto can manifest as very intense relationships, not necessarily just romantic relationships, but she might even crave intense relationships. But she can also probably, the sign of Virgo is very much about paying very close attention to detail. It's very analytical. So she's, let's say, somebody hands her a pile of documents. She can probably, scan through those documents with detail in kind of using her psyche. Pluto has a very big influence on the psyche. And not only that, but these guys, especially Pluto and Uranus, are opposing her Chiron up here again. So this 10th house is the house of career and status and public life. Like anybody who is trying to figure out what they want to do for a career or what's going on with their career, this is the first place any astrologer is going to look. Okay, now Chiron, let's just, I'm trying to, I don't want to go into too much detail here, but basically this opposition here she may even be somebody who, oh boy, like almost needs to have authority, like craves a position of authority. And in some way, shape, or form, it's not just because Chiron's in her 10th, it's really because it's opposing these guys. Chiron has a lot to do with what, like wounds from early childhood. And Pluto conjunct Uranus, this is like deep, strange psyche things, like deep in the psyche. And since they're opposing each other, her like I can't think of a better word to use here other than crave, but it's not exactly that's not the exact word I'm looking for. Regardless, hopefully you guys will pick up what I'm laying down here. It's like a desire for authority, and it might have something to do with an experience from early childhood. Okay, I just realized there's actually one more thing I better point out here. Her house of career, again, is in the sign of Pisces, which Pisces' traditional ruler is Jupiter. So I want to look at Jupiter in her chart as well. Here's Jupiter coming through her 12th house, which is the house of karma. Okay, so Jupiter is in the sign of Taurus. This can have to do with money. This can have to do with finances. This can have to do with her karma, because again, it's in her 12th house. But I think I'm actually going to hold off on going into more detail on that Jupiter because it's going to have to do with her transits. So let me pull up let's start with her transits for August 19th. Okay, so August 19th, this is the opening day of this Democratic National Convention. Okay, so now, obviously the chart has changed here. What I'm looking at here is the inner wheel is her natal chart. Okay, it's the exact same thing I was just looking at, except now it's just smaller. It's inside of this bigger wheel or outer wheel. This outer wheel, this is where all the planets and the celestial bodies will be on August 19th for everybody, but how they manifest specifically for Kamala Harris, where they line up in her chart. Like just as an example here, here's the moon. The moon for everybody, let's say I put this in for 12 noon to 12 p.m. on August 19th. So well, that was actually pretty perfect because that's right about the full moon time. So here's the moon for everybody at that time. The moon is going to be at 27 degrees Aquarius, but for Kamala Harris, because that sign of Aquarius comes through her 9th house, her house of higher learning, that sort of thing, that's where it comes through for her. Now, here's the big wow. So again, there's going to be a full moon in the sign of Aquarius on August 19th, the day of this opening of this Democratic Convention. Here's the moon, here's the sun. The sun's at 27 degrees Leo, the moon's at 27 degrees Aquarius. Now, if you remember, her sun and moon are also at 27 degrees, okay? Her sun's at 27 degrees Libra, her moon's at 27 degrees Aries. Okay, so 27 degrees, 27 degrees, 27 degrees, 27 degrees. That means these guys are all having a very intense conversation together. Okay, first of all, the moon here is going to be at the top of the chart. Again, this is authority. Basically, the whole top of the chart, kind of the end of the 9th house, and really the whole 10th house is authority and your career and that sort of thing. So here's the moon at 27 degrees Aquarius. First of all, there's this trine. We talked about trines. That's creating harmony with her inner being. The moon up in the sky is going to be harmonizing with her inner being. And then it might be hard to see, but there's also this green line that's going from here to here. The moon's going to be, the green lines are sextile. They're approximately 60-degree angle, and they create opportunity. So we've got the full moon beaming opportunistic rays at her natal moon. Okay. Not only that, but this is air, fire, fire, okay? They're all brother signs. The air signs and the fire signs are brother signs. They're considered masculine energy. Okay, so here's the sun at 27 degrees Leo. That's going to be making an opportunistic connection with her sun, beaming opportunistic rays at her in her beam. And then right here, the sun is beaming harmonious rays at her natal moon. And again, this is right at the sun and Mercury are going to be conjunct in the third house, which is the house of communication. Okay, the moon's going to be right at the top of the chart. Again, authority. This is just really, really, really strong stuff. Okay, I'm trying to figure out if I should go into this stuff now. I think I will. So here's Jupiter and Mars up in the sky will still be fairly conjunct. Okay, Mars again, actually, go. Jupiter touches something, he's going to expand it. Okay, he's going to make it a bigger deal. And those guys are just above her ascendant and her north node. Okay, so we've got Mars go in the sign of Gemini, again, social butterfly, and Jupiter making that a bigger deal, coming right into her north node, which is basically we receive when something hits your north node, you're going to be receiving like an extra dose of that celestial influence coming through with her persona, her rising sign. That's really, really strong. Now, let's see, Pluto up in the sky will actually be squaring pretty strongly her Mercury. In fact, that square is going on probably all the way till January. In fact, it's just follow along as best as you can right now. Pluto is going to be making a square, which a square, that's what the red lines are, creates a force, and it's generally an uncomfortable force that can have to do with internal tension, but it makes things happen. Okay, so Pluto influences the psyche. Pluto is Hades in Greek mythology. Pluto is the ruler of the underworld. Pluto's aggressive energy, and sending this like kind of forceful ray at her Mercury, which is the ruler of her chart. Okay, her mental function and her communication skills. And that's actually going to be going on for quite some time, even right around the time of the elections. I'll probably be making a stronger square with her sun at the elections, but then it's going to make a very, very strong square with her Mercury in January. So that's deep psyche stuff. That's kind of a stressful transit, if I'm being honest. And Pluto is also squaring her moon. So that's also, Pluto's creating some stress for her right now, for sure. Now, another thing I need to point out, well, actually, I think I'm going to leave that there. This is just for that convention. I'm going to tell you this. For that convention, she is probably going to shine like some kind of, diamond or something like that. She's going to stand out. She's going to be getting a lot of attention. Very well could even look like she's going to become president of the United States based on how things look for this convention. But after that, the moon moves very quickly. The moon goes around the zodiac every single month. Okay, some things, the sun goes around here every single year. Saturn takes about 29 years to go around this thing. Jupiter takes about 13 years to go around this thing. But the moon is the fastest. The moon goes very, very quickly. So this convention is between, I think, I know it starts on the 19th. I think it goes to the 22nd. So by the 22nd, the moon's going to be over here. It's going to start to go down. It's going to start to fade. But that first opening night is going to be like, boom, okay, for Miss Kamala Harris. Okay, so let me leave that there and let me pull up. I'm kind of trying to boogie along because I've got a reading coming up here in a half an hour. Let's go to November 5th. Okay, so now this is the election day, right? Okay, so there's Pluto still squaring her, basically squaring, now it's squaring her sun even stronger than it's squaring her moon, but it's really still squaring both. That's very, very, that's stressful. That's a stressful, I mean, I'm getting repetitive, but, and it's squaring her moon. That's not a fun transit. Pluto's squaring something that's such a personal planet, okay? Mars is also going to be squaring her moon and her sun and her Mercury. Okay, Mars again, and Mars is going to be in Leo. Mars is again, go, action, especially in the sign of Leo, 0 degrees Leo. And I'm telling you, man, this election, no matter who wins, and I use the air quotes because I don't even, in my brain, I'm like, did they win? What, do they win? I mean, do we really, does everybody's votes really count? Are they really being precise with this stuff? I don't know. I don't think so. But what at least we're being, the information that we are being told as the general public, I always feel like there's a whole heck of a lot more going on behind the scenes than we will ever know about. But what is being, projected out onto our little screens to say this person won president. It's going to create a lot of anger in the world, a lot of, no matter who wins, and no matter who wins. I mean, honestly, in my opinion, if Robert F. Kennedy were to win, that would probably create the least amount of drama, the least amount of, I'm sure there's some people who would be concerned. But, if Trump wins, there's going to be all these people freaking out and going crazy. If Kamala wins, then there's going to be people that are like, I just give up on the government. Just give up, which might be a good thing. But with Pluto here at 29 degrees Capricorn on November 5th, and Mars right here at 0 degrees Leo, they're very, very closely opposing each other. So Pluto is, again, deep, deep psyche. Pluto is the ruler of the underworld. Pluto rules. Pluto can be wonderful. It's like sometimes referred to as a planet of power. Pluto can be wonderful and make somebody very powerful. But Pluto can be very aggressive. Okay. Mars is the physical drive. Both of these guys are like the most aggressive of all those lights in the sky, and they're going to be opposing each other for everybody on Earth. So that's really, really strong stuff. Now, another one I wanted to point out here is she very recently, over the last couple of years, had a Saturn return. So Saturn moved into Pisces in March of 2023. So going back into late 2022, early 2023, I think I've got that right. She had what's called a Saturn return. That a lot of people don't even know anything about astrology. You've heard of a Saturn return before. It's something we experience approximately every 29 years. And it's usually a very, very tough transit. Sometimes it can be very, very rewarding. It's like, well, sometimes you have to change the whole structure of our life. We're having a Saturn return. But it usually can be pretty stressful, but it can also be very, very rewarding, especially if you have a strong Saturn in your natal chart, just like Kamala Harris does here. So the reason I know that is because here's Saturn on November 5th. Saturn came along, went TikTok right on over her Saturn, moved along, and is now in her house of career. Now, a lot of people will have a career peak because, again, Saturn loves to be up here. Saturn loves authority. Saturn loves to be the boss. Okay, so when he's in somebody's 10th house, a lot of times people will have a career peak. But Saturn doesn't do so well in the sign of Pisces, and that's what Saturn is in all the way until the end of February of 2026. So, and knowing that, but Saturn can also bring an end to things. An end. A lot of times, if Saturn's going through somebody's 10th house, they can end up having the career peak, but they can also end up having, they're done, they retire, or something along those lines, because Saturn does have a lot to do with endings as well and death. Okay. Not like Kamala is going to die, but something about her career can be brought to death potentially. And I see this as another very, very stressful transit for her, because this right here is making a very strong opposition with her Uranus. Now, Saturn, in Greek mythology, Saturn is Uranus's son. Okay, Uranus is Saturn's father. Okay, and they battled because really they both were kind of tyrants, but Saturn didn't want his father to be in charge anymore. So he battled his father. Saturn battled Uranus. Saturn was technically called Kronos, but battled his father, and in the story, cut his testicles off. Okay, and so these guys opposing each other for anybody is usually a pretty stressful transit. Let's see here. Uranus on her Jupiter. Okay, very, very close. Retrograding back. Basically, what Uranus has done here is Uranus has gone up has gone over her natal Jupiter and is going to be retrograding back closer to her natal Jupiter. That can also be a very stressful and unpredictable transit. Okay, even though Jupiter is like the great benefic, Jupiter brings the abundance. Again, she's got Jupiter and Taurus is really like the sign of money, and that's in her house of karma. But Uranus is coming along and could create some kind of very abrupt change to that. Okay, and that also could have a very strong effect on her career because Jupiter rules Pisces and her house of career is ruled by Pisces. Okay, again, I totally get it. This is not going to make all the sense so well for a lot of people. Also, interestingly, looks like her birthday is about 16 days before the election. So that's also very, very interesting to observe there. The sun is going to be between her Mercury and her Neptune, which is not necessarily, in fact, the sun up in the sky will be approaching her Neptune, which is not necessarily a benefit for career. Okay, Neptune, although Neptune is also one of Pisces rulers, traditionally we wouldn't necessarily really consider that to involve her career, but Neptune generally can make things confusing, foggy. Neptune is mystical. Neptune is spiritual. Neptune is diffusive. And the sun up in the sky is approaching that. It's like if you think about the sun as like a giant flashlight that's beaming on this thing that creates confusion and fogginess. Okay, so I think I better leave that there. Let me take one last glance to make sure I've got everything I really wanted to cover. Moon's going to be at 1 degree Capricorn, which Robert F. Kennedy has a ton of Capricorn energy in his chart. The moon's going to be at 1 degree, a waxing moon at 1 degree Capricorn on November 5th. That's going to be in her 8th house, which is the house of transformation. She doesn't have any Capricorn energy, but the moon will be, oh, that's something to point out. Here's the moon waxing, getting bigger, making growth, okay? Sending these opportunistic rays towards her midheaven, okay? And also sending opportunistic rays to her Mercury, the ruler of her chart. That can be to her advantage. Venus is going to be approaching her south node and her lot of fortune. How interesting. That wouldn't necessarily help somebody win an election. But let's see, Venus is also going to be trining her Mars. That could be good for her. Chiron is going to be trining her Mars. That could be good for her. But overall, I really don't see this as a holy smokes, this person's definitely going to win. I don't see that in this chart. Okay, now that's just my opinion. And as I mentioned earlier, I really could go into a whole heck of a lot more information. And I will do that. If I can't get my friend to connect with me before, say mid of October, then I'll probably do something myself and go into the zodiacal releasing, go into her progressions, go into her annual perfections. And so we can look even deeper into all of these candidates. Okay, you guys, I'm gonna leave that there. If you would like to schedule a reading for yourself, an astrology reading for yourself, please do visit erinwageastrology.com. I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.